start gathering your seats. We do have an agenda that's hot off the press here. Wow, look at that timing. My name is Cale Casey. I'm the lead information officer for the Alaska Interagency Incident Management Team. I'm also a member of the community living at milepost 7-3 on the corner of Gratiot and the Parks Highway with all those lights and flags. A lot of folks here on our team, we call ourselves the Green Pants Nation because we come from both local, borough, state, federal, tribal agencies, and we all come together as one fire team. You've seen this before, 2015, when a lot of us were here for the Sockeye Fire. Quick points of business here. If you have a cell phone, please turn it to stun. Firefighters with radios, please turn them off. We are live streaming, so we're going to try to project into our microphone here. For our audience, we have the camera in front of me is the Alaska DNR Division of Forestry page, which is what I've been live streaming off of. We have KTUU, KTVA, and other news agencies that have been doing updates throughout the incident. It's been evolving. I believe we also might have a public media. Right there, you can always tell they got the big fuzzy mic on the table. And the agenda is going to come around real soon. I'll walk you through it. As people keep trickling in, just grab a seat. There's plenty up front. So, Incident Commander Norm McDonald, who hails from Palmer, is going to be doing the Incident Commander's comments here after me. We're going to have an operations update from Karen Scholl, who is based out of Fairbanks in the summer. You've been following fires around Alaska. She's been the ops chief on many fires this summer, including the Oregon Lakes, out at Delta Junction, and the Shovel Creek up in Fairbanks, and most recently the Chalkeetzik fire in the upper Yukon, 600,000 acres. And now here she is in Willow. We also have Julia Rutherford, who's from Anchorage. She's one of the best incident meteorologists in the nation. I've traveled with every incident management team that is in existence, and I can personally attest that when Julia speaks about weather, I often record her just for my own playing it back. She's very detailed, she's very solid, and very accurate. Chris Moore is going to be doing our fire behavior. I was recently looking at footage of you at the most expensive fire in history in California, the Sobranes fire, when you were doing work down there. $250 million spent on that, and Chris has a lot of experience under him. He'll tell you about what the fuel conditions are like. He'll tell you about the very Alaskan term build-up index, which is at record right now. A little preview as people trickle in and grab their seats. We're going to move into Kim Barkley, our Director of Emergency Services here for the Borough, of which I am a part-time employee, our Mayor, Vern Halter, and we also have Matt Pickett, just fresh on the agenda for the Assessor's Office. I won't steal anybody's thunder, but their team is out there on the ground right now. You'll see my name again in the Deshka fire update that is now going to be replaced by Alan from the team, the Pacific Northwest team. Alan just walked in the door. He's a colleague from Oregon, Washington, and though their team is in briefing tomorrow morning at 0700, he will do what he can to give you a Deshka update, and then just going forward to preemptive answer some of your questions. I will do what I can during the live feeds to give you a Deshka update on the channels that we normally go on. When Alan's in place, he'll be able to send over maps and direct intel, and then I'll include them in the feeds because obviously it's our backyard here. We do not have one team managing both fires. For span of control and to give this community in Willow exactly what it needs along this impacted area, there's one team, and then for the Deshka fire, there's another separate incident management level 2 team. Down in the Kenai, there's a type 1 team from the Great Basin that just arrived. Down in Homer, there are fires, and out in the Aleutians, there are smoke jumpers working right now. What does that tell us? That tells us the conditions are extremely dry in Alaska right now. And we're having another big year that will go down, as it already has here, in one of those, how do we get here? When will it rain? When will it end? And to kick things off, Norm McDonald has recently been promoted to the Chief of Fire and Aviation for the state of Alaska. Worked with Norm for a long, long time, and he's going to give you the general comments, and then we'll go right down our agenda. Towards the end here, we'll have a Q&A, and if there are other speakers from the borough or who need to speak, get with me on the side. I'll put your name in the agenda, and we'll go from there. We'll hold our questions to the end. And we'll go ahead and make sure that our online audience also has a chance to chime in. Norm?
Let's go. Now I can move. How many folks here are looking for information on the Deshka fires out of curiosity?
Wow.
Okay, so about half the group. So we do have the public information officer. I don't know who that was that just walked in. Okay, right back there. We just did a cooperators meeting about a couple hours ago. A lot of the questions we got were about that Deshka fire. Just a quick history. We were brought in originally to manage both incidents, McKinley and the Deshka. With the complexity of this one was showing on, was it Sunday evening? We did this fire for one team. There's enough going on here where it's to take all of our focus to deal with this incident. And as Kale said, ENW 10 was brought in to manage that Deshka incident. So they're about a day behind us, which means about a day behind the information. So we're going to try to get you some information on that, and we'll have the public information officer can speak to it, but in the upcoming days there should be a lot more information on that. So we'll try to help bridge that gap until they get fully engaged and in place. So for the McKinley fire, we took over operational control on yesterday evening, about 8 o'clock. We relieved the initial attack forces. As you guys know, the fire started, Jake helped me out, that was Saturday afternoon, correct? So they've been going for close to 48 hours straight, no sleep. So our job when we come in here is to let those folks go back to their day jobs, which a lot of them are borough firefighters. So they're here for the ambulance calls, the structure fires, the vehicle accidents, that type of thing. And then the local division of forestry resources, which are there for initial attack to catch the next fire from going big. I do want to point out the day that this fire started, it was the same day the Deshka fire started. I think they had 14 other starts that day. Most of them they were able to keep at about a half an acre to an acre. So there's a lot of good work done. These two fires were a little further north in the valley, which is a little stronger winds. And when you combine the fuels that they had, which you'll hear about, those wind conditions that they had, and just the number of fires where they were spread thin, they weren't able to catch these fires like they did the other ones. But there was a lot of really good work that day done. We could have had 4 to 5 fires like this in the valley, and they were successful on most of them. These two fires, where we're at. So our team was brought in to help manage these. We're working for the Division of Forestry. Ed Soto just sat down. He's our regional forester. He's got the operational and by statute control of these fires. But what we do is work very closely with the other cooperators. So the Matsu Borough and the emergency services, Ken and I have worked together since Miller's Reach Fire. We were talking about it just the other day. So we've got a long relationship. We've worked together on a lot of fires like this. Jake Boothby is one of the first folks in from the borough. I've worked with him for now, can't believe it, Jake, for like 20 years. So we've got a long history. So what that helps us do is when we come in there with our team, we've got a good relationship. We're able to kind of go operational very quickly, get those guys back to their day jobs and get them some sleep, and then our team can help take operational control and take that workload off the local resources. They're still engaged with us. They're rotating people through to help out with structure engines and the structure protection that's going on, and we're able to get a lot of those folks back so they can be ready for the next fire. That's what we're trying to help them out to do. There's one of the things as upcoming days comes, there's going to be good news and there's going to be bad news. Our job is to get that to you honestly. So whether it's good news, we're going to tell you that. If it's bad news, we'll let you know what that is as well. And we'll do whatever we can to get that to you in a timely manner. We come in and we set objectives, and we, under the guidance of the agency we're working for, part of those are operational, keep the fire as small as we can, protect public safety, firefighter safety, and protect structures and homes and values at risk. And the other part of that, one of our objectives is that public messaging, both with our cooperators and the public. So what we'll do is these meetings, as often as we need to, we'll switch locations so we can be on this side of the road closure or the north side if we need to. We've talked about doing something in the Menard Center where the evacuation shelter is. So folks who are there and might not have transportation get that message. So folks like Kale and the rest of our public information staff will provide every avenue we can to get that information out to you. And Kale probably hit on a couple of those avenues where you can get that through social media, YouTube, and just meetings like this. So we'll hit all avenues we can to keep this as current as we can for you. There's going to be a lot of questions, I know, about the structures and what were lost. We were originally estimating 50 structures. We do have Rich Boothby from the Fire Marshal's office. They're working with the borough to do assessments. So as they work through that process, they will be the agency that will have that information and be able to provide that as they get that collected. So that's started this morning, and it'll be ongoing for the next however long it takes to get a full accountability of what structures were lost and locations. We're working very closely with the troopers. We'll continue that's with the road. One of our primary objectives is to get both the railroad and the road corridors open so we can get traffic in and out. Right now it's still down to one lane, and at least for the short term with the smoke conditions and fire traffic on the road, that'll probably remain like that at least for the next couple of days. We're working with them to move that checkpoint up. We worked with Vern and some of the folks in the borough today, and we think we can move that up a little bit and allow people who are not in the evacuation zone back into their homes in a more timely manner. So we're looking at opportunities to do that hopefully as soon as today. Our operations troopers and DOT are looking at how we can do that and make that work. So we still provide firefighter safety, but also get people back access to their homes who live in that stretch. So Kale, I think with that we'll go down your list, and that can be available for questions when we're done. Thanks.
Great. Okay, real quick, how's the sound check? So let's bump it up a little bit. I was screening a little bit over here, and then for folks who just came in, there's agendas and maps, and we'll start off our operational briefing with Operations Chief Karen Schull.
Good afternoon. So this fire, hang on, this is bugging me. Okay, so fire started, as you guys know, on Saturday afternoon. Big winds, dry conditions, and fire ran with the wind starting up at the very north end, where you can see the X with the white circle around it. It's got by Saturday, late Saturday, it was down just north of Sheep Creek where it crosses the highway. Everything was staying on the east side of the road, and would have stayed there had the wind subsided, but that didn't happen. And as we moved into Sunday, we got some spotting to the east side, to the west side of the road. Firefighters are far and few between right now because of all the other initial attacks. So they did what they could. The initial attack forces worked really hard through the night and did the best they could given the conditions they had. It was a pretty chaotic time, as you can imagine. So Sunday, the fire pushed down further south and is basically in a holding pattern where it's at now. With the winds subsiding Sunday and into Monday, we didn't have much fire growth on yesterday. So, however, that doesn't mean the fire isn't able to move. It's taken advantage of all the dry fuels out there, the black spruce, and is still moving around to some degree. Right now we are exhibiting some fire growth. We have lots of pockets that are moving around. Mostly we're seeing it on the east side of the fire. On the northern half right now, they're running retardant, trying to keep it on the west side of Sheep Creek. And then we're also having quite a bit of activity down on the south end, on the southeast side. So we are running helicopters with buckets, and we're trying to keep the fire in the current footprint. So with the activity and the crews that we have currently, we have 3 crews on the fire. We're expecting more to come. As we get more crews in, we're really going to be able to go direct. And what that means is we're going to be trying to contain the fire at the smallest footprint with what we call 1 foot in the black. So firefighters and dozers, engines are working right on the fire's edge to try and keep it as small as possible. So that's going to be our overall strategy, is direct tactics. Now with that, we still have structures interior that are threatened, and we're aware of that, and we're trying to allocate our resources accordingly to be able to protect the structures that are still within the fire area and where the fire may move, and also try and hold on the fire and keep it from growing. So it's a big task with the amount of resources that we have, and we've ordered quite a bit. So we're expecting 10 crews over the next couple of days to show up, and we've got dozers put to work trying to get a line around the east side, and we've got engines, and like Norm said, we're trying to replace the IA engines, initial attack engines, and get them back and backfill behind them with wildland resources that can stay longer and for the duration. So lot of moving parts. As a team comes in, we're trying to just organize it. We've got a lot of middle management, fire line supervisors in place now. We're trying to organize it into geographical areas to try and hold the fire where we're at. So as far as the road conditions and where we're trying to keep the road closures and the escort, right now, because of the current activity, we're going to have to hold it where it's at. And I know that's an inconvenience, but that's reality right now. We've got a lot of activity going on the road on that south end, especially today. You'll hear the weather report coming up, but these next couple days are really critical for us, given that the winds are subsiding right now, but we are expecting a little bit higher winds over the weekend. Doesn't sound like it's going to be as ripping as it was last weekend, but we need to take advantage of the opportunity we have right now with the low winds and get in, and so we really need to have our space to be able to operate without folks getting back into that area. So sorry about that inconvenience, but we need to be able to protect our firefighters and make it a space where they can get in and work without being concerned with citizens in the work area. Also on scene, we've got 3 helicopters, mediums with buckets, and a light helicopter. We've got heavy tankers that we're sharing with the other fires. So depending on who's calling for the tanker, the fires across the area, Swan, Deshka Landing, us, and then what's going on the Kenai, they have to prioritize. So depends on where we are in the priority level for that day, and determines whether we get the air tanker support or not. So we can call for it and ask for it, and if it shows it does, and we'll utilize it to the best of our abilities. So I guess in closing here, for the folks on the east side of the fire, in the the Hidden Hills community, we are still looking at that. We're not turning our back on that. And we've got folks out there assessing and trying to determine what it would take to protect that if the fire moves to the east. So we're looking at that strongly, as well as all the other structures that are around the perimeter of the fire currently. So we're doing our best right now to assess all the structures in the area and be prepared if the fire should move. But we're really trying to hold it in place right now. So I think that's about it, unless you have any questions for me.
We'll hold questions.
We'll do questions at the end, and then this won't be the last you see of Karen. We'll do some operational updates in the next several days. I tried to get her to be on camera last night, but when you see how little people sleep and how long they work, sometimes you have mercy on them. And instead I had Deputy Incident Commander Tom Kurth help last night with the live feed. So you won't see the last of Karen going forward. Next up is Julia Rutherford, our incident meteorologist, with a complete weather briefing.
Good afternoon. So my role on the fire as an incident meteorologist is, my day job is also as a weather forecaster, but when I get deployed to a fire, I come on site and am forecasting the weather just specifically for the fire, so it really lets me focus in a lot more on the local scale details and be on site to be able to communicate with all of the fire team, the firefighters, and community and everything. So it lets me get zoomed a lot more into what's happening right here locally on the ground. So I'm going to start off talking about the wind event that happened over the weekend. As far as fire weather patterns in south central Alaska, what happened was really on the pretty critical side. Because both it's a high-end event because of the widespread nature of it, it affected a very, very large area, very strong winds, and also very dry conditions as well. Living in this area, you know north winds are not unusual here at all. They'll come down over the Alaska Range Channel through Broad Pass and through the Susitna Valley, though that's more typically a fall time and winter time pattern. When it happens earlier during the summer, late summer into August, what happens with that is as that air comes up and over the mountains, it gets lifted pretty high and then it subsides down the other side. As it sinks, it compresses, it warms, and that makes it become very dry, and it also can channel down those valleys pretty quickly. So that's what came together to make it as severe as it was with the winds. They were gusting in the 25 to 30 mile an hour range. Humidities were down 20% or even lower than that, and then the temperatures were pretty warm in the upper 60s to around 70. So that combination of all those factors is what made this be one of our higher end kind of fire weather patterns. And then also the duration, just that it happened for multiple days at a time. Like I said, in the winter, having those north winds just last day after day after day is pretty common, but for that to happen at the end of the summer is a more rare high-end kind of event. Over the last day, those winds have really subsided quite a lot, and we've had much more calm conditions. That's what we're expecting today, Wednesday and Thursday as well. Overnight, we're getting light north winds, which is mostly just acting to drift the smoke around. They're only a couple miles an hour, not very strong. Then in the afternoon and evening, south winds around 5 miles an hour, continuing to push up the valley. So that's what we're expecting this afternoon, but then again also on Wednesday, Thursday. We're also, with a very dry air mass in place, getting really strong nighttime inversions, cold temperatures down in the valleys, but then those break midday and we get back up into mid-60s with fairly dry conditions. And again, that's what we're going to see persisting. For smoke concerns over the area, that's unfortunately a pattern that will tend to hold the smoke in. It gets concentrated in those nighttime inversions, so I would expect to see each night that smoke getting fairly dense with visibility concerns along the highway, and then just really persisting, hanging in over the area until midday, like noon or 1 p.m. before it starts to lift out. The southerly winds coming up the valley, even though they're light, they're unfortunately transporting the smoke from the Swan Lake fire up to this area. So you noticed yesterday afternoon an increase in the mid and higher level smoke coming up there. So that's being brought up from the Dutchka and Swan Lake. So it's not just the local smoke, but we're getting local smoke down low and then more moving in over the valley. And then that all concentrates over the area in the afternoon and evening. So I think that's going to be a fairly significant concern for this area through at least Thursday. The change in the weather pattern coming in the Friday, Saturday, Sunday time period is upper level trough, frontal system coming down from the northwest, bringing some cooler air from interior up over the area. It is going to have some clouds with it. Slight chance of showers, isolated rain showers. Best chance for them would be in the Friday night time period, but they're going to be pretty light, pretty spotty. The other piece of it is, as that trough comes through, that will be bringing the north-northeast winds back to the area. They're not going to be as strong as the previous event. Temperatures are also going to be cooler, and the humidities are going to be higher. There'll be more clouds around, so it's something we're watching very closely, but right now it doesn't look like anywhere near as severe an event as what happened over the weekend. I would expect you'll see northeast winds in the 15 mile an hour range, but the temperatures staying a lot cooler with the mostly cloudy skies, and the humidity's higher. So something to pay attention to, but a milder end kind of event. Following that, it looks like we're going to go back into getting a little drier, maybe partly cloudy by Sunday, and then getting back to mostly sunny by Monday. So aside from the slight chance of rain coming through Friday night, there's really not any big season-ending significant rain events on the horizon. Just something that'll help moderate conditions for a little bit with the clouds and the cooler temperatures and the higher humidities. That's all I got.
Great. Thank you, Julia. And Chris Moore, the fire behavior analyst. And so we go by these terms like I'm a PIO, right? Public Information Officer. So Chris is an FPAN, fire behavior analyst.
Good afternoon. So there are three things that make a fire burn: the fuels, the weather, and topography. So Julia just covered the weather. As you can see along the highway, the topography is relatively flat, so that's not aiding or taking away how the fire is going to burn. But the big thing we have is the fuels in the area. So we have three main fuel types that are burning. Black spruce is the most active. It burns the fastest. It exhibits the most extreme fire behavior. So that's the number one problem fuel. The second fuel that we have out there is the white spruce, which many of you know has a bark beetle infestation. So most of that is standing dead, so that's more available to burn. Still not as much as the black spruce, but it's not as resistant to fire spread as it would be if it was fully green. And then the third fuel we have are the hardwoods. And as many of you also know, that the birch has the leaf miner, so it's turning all the leaves brown, but it's not actually killing the tree. But things are so dry that fire is still carrying through the hardwood. So we have those 3 different fuels out there, the black spruce being the main one of concern. So in Alaska, we use the Canadian Forest Fire Danger Rating System. It's a mouthful, but what it does is how we track the dryness over the season. And what Cal mentioned before was the buildup index, the BUI, and that is what we use to monitor seasonal severity. So the beginning of the year, the BUI is pretty low, and then as things dry out, it starts to climb with the dry periods that we're having. We get a little rain, it drops again. We go into a period like this where we don't have a whole lot of rain, it starts climbing again. And so as of today, we are at record high levels for BUIs, meaning that the duff from the surface down to however low it goes around here is extremely dry. And so what that does means the fire is very difficult to contain. We're having trouble keeping the fire in its current perimeter. So that resistance to control is extremely high, and then those deeper layers, even deeper than that, 4 to 8 inches down, are also dry, and that means that things like the hardwoods can burn more readily at this time of year, increases what we call the control resistance to extinguishment. Trying to put the fire out is really hard because that fire can burrow down very deep in the duff and burn around, and people have to do extra work to try and get all those hot spots out. One of the things that's compounding the problem is that when the duff layer is burning so deeply, all the trees in the fire area, they have shallow roots. There's nothing holding those trees in place, so they start falling over. The power poles are now falling over as well, even with little wind. So those trees fall on top of the duff, making it even harder for people to get into and make sure they put out all the hot spots. So we have a few things compounding the problem of trying to put out the fire. And then on top of that, we don't have the wind that we had over the weekend, but when we do have gusts of wind and they align with the fuels, right, if you just have windy conditions and no dry fuels, you don't get fire. If you have dry fuels and no wind, you have less fire. So when things come into alignment, that's where we see the greatest fire behavior. So in the afternoon, like we have today, even if we have a couple of gusts of light wind, if the fire is in some black spruce, then you'll see an increase in activity. So even under these lighter wind patterns that we have, the fire is going to burn where the fuel and those winds align. So even on days like today, we're still going to have fire spread, not as great as it was over the weekend. And then coming up over the weekend, we have to monitor how that pattern comes through and then how that's going to interact with the fire, or with the dry fuels. So it's definitely on our radar and something to pay attention to. But that's pretty much what I do all day, is trying to forecast where the fire is going to go and help out people like Karen in operations to say, oh, this is going to be an area of concern, or something like that, so she can build a better plan. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Chris. Ken, you're next. All right, thanks, Chris. And Ken Barkley, our Emergency Services Director, is here, and also he's been involved since day one and always as a partner with the team, part of the Greenspans Nation.
Thank you. Just to put a little bit of this into perspective, Saturday afternoon, when we first got the call, which the first call I actually got was from the mayor, when I found out we were having a fire, and we had nine fires reported. The McKinley fire was the 4th fire. We were jumping fires to fire to fire. This was the 4th one. We had 9 fires in 5 hours, 9 wildland fires and 2 structure fires. That was in the first 5 hours. That depleted all resources immediately. And then within 12 hours, we had, within the 8th hour, we had 12 wildland fires and 1 more additional structure fire, just in the first 8 hour period. There's 2 things you've heard tonight. Is the worst things we want is dry conditions and wind. And we had both. Extremely dry conditions, most we've ever seen in Alaska, and then the high winds. And those 2 conditions were against us from the beginning. Some of the hazards are, as you've just heard, the trees are falling. And that's part of the problem we're having with trying to get people back into their homes, not only with the fire conditions, smoke, but also the hazards of trees just falling over because of the conditions. I just want to talk about the evacuation centers. There's 2 of them. One's in Sunshine, and the other one's in Menard, south of us. So if you have any needs or need anything, that's the 2 shelters that you can go to and get information. Or if you have special needs, medications, or anything like that, try to get a hold of those 2 areas and they will help you. Hats off to Red Cross and the CERT team. They've been monitoring both of them. They're doing a fantastic job. I believe the last count was just around 80 people in both of those total. We also have the call-in center. Just the number's been posted on the Borough website. You can call in and tell us which house was yours, the address, how many were in the house, so we can account for everybody. That's what we're trying to do right now. Rich Boothby, State Fire Marshal, and his team are working on that now, making sure that we have accounted for everybody. Some of them may be seasonal homes. We're trying to get a hold of them as well to make sure that everyone is accounted for. That's the number 1 priority for us right now. We do have an update recording. The number is also listed on the Borough webpage, and we've been updating that at least twice a day, letting you know on conditions and any changes to include road conditions, whether the traffic's moving or not. All Borough fire departments, all of them, have been on these fires from day 1. We also have Palmer and Houston have been with us from day 1, and we're all working together, and then several other fire departments throughout the state, all working side by side. Day 1, when we first got to the fire, Forestry was with us. We showed up at the same times. We'd already been on 3 other fires prior to that. When we got to the McKinley, that was our 4th fire together. The other thing, AST, the National Guard, have been helping us tremendously on keeping traffic flowing. That's been critical. Obviously, it's the major artery for folks going north and south. So hats off to them for their help. And they're also helping us working with the State Fire Marshal's office and also making sure that the area where the fire was is secured at all times. And we'll take questions at the end.
Okay, Brad. Brad's up next, right? So our assessor, we're lucky to have Brad here today. He did a tough job. And you want to say a few words about the operation today? Okay, so Brad Pickett, Matsu Borough Assessor.
Thank you. The reason I'm here today is to ask for your help. The Matsu Borough has an ordinance in place that allows us to reassess property that's been damaged by fire. This is not typical of all jurisdictions, but it is something that we adopted in 2007, and not everybody's aware of it. What it is if you've suffered damage from a fire to your real property, we'll do a reassessment of it. It's going to be prorated based from the time that fire damage occurred until December 31st. But the important thing is to share that information with the folks that are losing their home. This is a terrible, tragic event to go through. They're not thinking about property taxes at this time. And there is a 60-day window with this ordinance, and it's from the date of the damage of the fire that they need to file that application with the assessment office. I need your help to get that word out there. We can put out flyers, we'll get the applications out here, whatever it takes to make sure that everybody's aware of this and doesn't miss this opportunity. I did bring 100 of those flyers and applications with me today. I didn't know if this was going to be the time to get them started or not. But the sooner we get the word out there, share this with your family, your friends, your neighbors, everybody. We don't want them to miss this opportunity. And don't hesitate to call the assessment office, get that contact information with us, and as this thing progresses and gets to a time where we can get appraisers up here to start looking at the structures, we'll be going around looking at everything that's been damaged ourselves, but we do need to have that information from the property owners as well. Okay.
All right, thanks, Brad. And then we did get Alan Hoffmeister. He's the incoming information officer for Pacific Northwest Team 10, and we're putting him a little bit on the spot. It's a travel and transition day for his team. They actually take command tomorrow morning at 0700, but we asked Alan to do his best and give you information on Deshman.
Thank you, Kale. This has been great for me to find out what's happening on our neighboring fire. And I think I can safely say that the history, the burning conditions, the tactics sound very similar to what's going on the Dishka landing fire. Some maps were handed out, shows you where that fire is. That's the way it's been pretty much the last 24 hours. I was out there this morning talking with the initial attack folks, and they say it's continuing to move, but they're talking about creeping slowly, those kinds of things. Just like the McKinley fire, we're waiting for the person power to get out there and start building some direct line around the fire to make sure it doesn't move significantly. But that's about it. As Cale said, the team is just shadowing today, finding out what's going on, and they'll be taking over management tomorrow. They're setting up an incident command post down at the, Big Lake? Lions Club arena down there. It's a ways away, but it's a facility that will meet our needs. So that's what's going on. I'll stay around if you want to ask any questions about that particular fire.
Thanks, Alan. And I just believe some numbers on that fire. 2,217 acres. For those of you who can't see the map, it looks like the fire's eastern edge has bumped south Polly Lake, and but it's west. So it's entered the park. Okay, so if you're looking at the state park map, the east edge of the fire has entered the west edge of the park, and it's bumped south Raleigh. It's still west of Raleigh Lake. And that'll be more clear as we can punch out better, closer, zoomed-in maps. And as teams come in place, they bring the staffing and firepower to do that. So again, we'll try to cover those in the live feed. A word on donations. Somebody stopped me today and Ladasa and said, hey, we want to drop off this and that. Our general policy in incident management and firefighting is that firefighters come self-contained. We're professionals. This is a paid assignment. This is what we do. This is what we train for. This is our day-to-day life. A lot of us are on day 80 plus. The biggest gift you can give a firefighter anywhere, whether it's here, up north, down the 48, is the gift of defensible space. That's the gift you can give a firefighter. What does that mean? Your driveway's brushed out, cleared out, trucks can get in, get out, you've moved your wood piles away from your house, you've brushed your trees, you've done all those things you've heard about for years, but you've actually done them. That's defensible space. You can also make thank you signs. You can drop off postcards with stamps, and then firefighters can send those home. Having been on literally 1,000 days of incident in my life, I can tell you that when you can send that postcard home, and we will have crews arriving. We have Warm Springs on schedule that come from Oregon. We have the Rogue River shots coming up. We have 3 more shot crews that are all coming from the outside. When they come here and see your gratitude, we see it on the live feed. We do a live feed to be transparent, to give you information, to ask you to give us your questions so we can answer them. We see a lot of gratitude there. But the firefighters, they're busy working right now. They're spraying water into deep holes that aren't going out. It takes hours and hours and hours of hose work just to get one little area out, and they're not seeing all the things that we see, the gratitude. So that's how you can help firefighters. Donations, if you want to make physical donations, please drop them off at the local fire departments. The folks who are here year-round, unpaid, volunteering to be initial attack. Just a note on that, because it always comes up. Vern, do you want to go after Q&A, or do you want to go right now? Let's have you go ahead and do and then we'll go into Q&A. That's all right? Okay. Our Mayor, Vern Huckler.
Thank you, sir. Well, this is a very sad day for Matthew, Borough, and Willow. You know, it's just 2015. We're not over the trauma of the Sockeye fire, and here we go again. And of course, Mother Nature does kind of rule. You know, this absolute drought that we've had all summer it's been horrible. You can just feel the effects of it. And then, of course, the fires. My first calls on the fires were Saturday morning, I think about 11 a.m. And the Willow fire crew is already headed north. I think Caswell was there working on that fire. I got a call about 1:30. Lucky Shot right up the road here was a down power line, and that was burning. And so I went up there. By the time I got up there, I think I counted Houston's fire department there, Willow's fire department there, Westlake's fire department there, Talkeetna was there, and Willow, and they had that one pretty well surrounded. And that was great. A little bit later in the afternoon, I get a call. I think it was a joint call. Wild Bill Way. Fire started up there at Wild Bill Way, and of course, a few minutes later, they called about Deshka and saying the fire had just taken off at Deshka. And I did go up. Mr. Barkley got some woman, Bobby, I think she's here someplace. We went up and looked at Wild Bill Way then, and there she is right over there in the evening, Saturday evening, and went through the lines, and I felt pretty good at that time. I thought, boy, it's controllable. And then, of course, Mother Nature did take over, and the wind started picking up, and the way it went Sunday, it was just absolutely horrible Sunday, and Sunday night was probably worse, and so it's my gratitude to the Willow Fire Department, the Caswell Fire Department, the Talkeetna Fire Department. At one time, I saw J-Bear engines up there and J-Bear crews. I think there was Elmendorf crews up there. Like Ken said, Palmer, Houston, you name it, they were all up there, and everybody was giving it the best shot. But the wind was just too tough, and it started moving across the Parks Highway. And I think they were trying to keep it on the east side, but I got across the Parks Highway walking this way. And of course, Deshka was taken off. The Deshka fire was taken off, headed south. And here we are. And the Mat-Su Borough will do its very best to help everybody affected by this fire. You know, we had Mr. Pickett just speak, but we'll also, as time goes on, we'll try to help with debris removal and things like that, and we'll do our very best. And I just want to say this too. Over the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years, we've invested a lot in the infrastructure. New fire halls. We have up in Talkeetna area, Caswell. There's 2 here at Willow. And these do make a difference, to have the personnel, the engines, and the people, and to have all of your volunteers and your fire people. We owe them a huge thank you. And hopefully the wind will stay down. And I don't know, a meteorologist, it doesn't look like we got a lot of rain coming anytime soon. So this is not over. Believe me, any little wind. And Governor Dunleavy, I think anytime very soon, Mr. Moosey is going to declare that all fires, any type of fire, campfires, hunting fires, and I want to say this about hunting. Hunting's a beautiful thing here in the state of Alaska, but please do not start fires anywhere, anytime, for any reason right now. Because it's just too volatile out there. Trapper Creek had a couple incidents last night with these type of campfires, and it's just not the time or place. And so we want to rule all those out. And I want to make sure, if this is streamed live, everybody's listening, because it's not gonna, it doesn't look like it's gonna rain for any time in the future. When this stuff does get down in that slough, it is a tough thing to keep out. It's gonna take rain. I think it's gonna take rain, really, and an exerted effort by everybody to keep us safer. And right now, I think it does look good at these 2 fires up north, and of course over at Deshka. And I guess a couple power lines started them. I'm not sure what the cause was of the Deshka fire. I doubt it was a power line, just looking at the location. So we want to, you know, they'll determine that. The professionals work on that. That's what they do. They'll come up with the cause of these, and we'll know that. That'll come in the future. But the immediate trauma that fires cause, and the long-term trauma is just, I'm just sad for Willow and the Mat-Su Borough and everything that we got to go through this again. So, and we do, John Moosey's here. We have a emergency declaration that we sent to the governor and the governor's office, local disaster emergency declaration. We're notifying the governor that we want the governor to declare an emergency and to start freeing up federal assistance, federal money to come down to, you know, when the state's fighting these fires, I don't know the exact cost, you know, 50 million, 70 million, you know, but it's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot. And so we're going to need federal assistance. And I do want to thank everybody. You know, the tankers started moving in yesterday. The hotshot crews are coming as we speak, and there's some here, and the bulldozers are up there now in several locations, and trying to cut fire lines, and then these hotshot crews are walking in and following them, and it's a tough thing. I was at Newman's this morning, and I saw a whole bunch of crews come in, and to see the soot and dirt on them and the hard work they're doing, it is really something. So with that, I'll just say goodbye, and I'm not the one to ask questions. Let all these professionals answer them.
Okay, thanks, Fred. I'm going to call up Karen and Norm and Tom. That's the 3 I'll start with. Tom, I'd like to have you with our questioning, because you and I would go way back with our questions. Tom fielded about an hour's worth of questions at the Swan Lake fire back in the day when it was about 2 months ago. And so thanks for that, Tom. It's always a lot. The questions here should be for the good of the order. So for the overall arcing event, big picture questions, if you have very specific questions, that's what the breakout session is after this. Okay, so if it's about your house, your property, your pinpoint location, after the bigger questions, we'll have you visit directly with us, one-on-one. I'll be the last one to leave the building. And you can ask those more specific questions that would pertain just to you. But if it pertains more to like, hey, I live at mile 75 and I need to get driving more up to my house and back because it's driving me nuts, I have to wait an hour at mile 71, that's a question for everybody. And we'll get that answered here. Okay? So let's start with somebody. Yes?
What you're talking about, discretion, at the line there where the roadblock is. On Sunday night, I was turned back by a police officer and told I could only go home if I evacuate. I live right next door to you.
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat the question as we go so we don't lose it because we have 3 different audiences here watching. So you live at mile 73?
73.8.
73.8, and then you had an officer turn you back.
And he told me the only way he was going to let me go if I took 10 minutes to get my family and a mandatory evacuation for me and my family to leave.
Okay, so it sounds like we had a resident at mile 74 in the heat of the battle got given some information that might have been too broad ranging. I'll have Norm address that.
Is there a way that the people that live there can get past the blockage so that they can get home? We get a pass or ID where our address is, because when you're working 10 hours a day, waiting 2 hours in traffic to get 1.8 miles home, you got to drive back the next day if you fall asleep at the wheel that day.
So this is the question about the evacuation and being mandatory or not. The second part is access to, down the road outside the evacuation area, but to where your house is.
Right.
So for the state of Alaska for evacuations, we cannot do mandatory evacuations. Now in the heat of a fire, if you are not in an area, we could do a hard closure, and that's for firefighter and public safety. So when you were told that, and I was not there, but I'm assuming he got his direction from the firefighters that said, keep people out, it's too dangerous to have people in here, we need people to move out of the way. And when there's fire going on and you know, the conditions we had with the wind and spotting, decisions are made quickly, and it's the best interest of the firefighters and also the public. So how that was relayed to you, I can't speak to that, but I'm pretty sure it was feeling for your safety and the firefighter safety. So that's I'm sure how that was handled. And I've been through many evacuations, and they're never pretty or clean, and a lot of times the language used gets construed, but it's really, the point is get people out of the way for their safety and the firefighter safety. And I think that's what happened there. Today we are working with the troopers, our operations section, and DOT to look at moving that closure to a different location. We need a couple of things. One, we need a place where the big trucks can turn around. One of the issues we had going on into it the first Sunday night was the closure was put in place where there wasn't a good turnaround, and you get these double tanker oil car trucks that were stuck in traffic and could not turn around. So they moved it back to the Willow fish hook. They gave a good place for all the trucks to turn around in case that fire kept coming. So we're looking at a spot for that. There's a couple down the road close to the fire that would allow access, and we're trying to get that to work where we can still do fire operations safely and get people back in their homes. So we took operational patrol this last night. Our first priority today is working with the troopers, DOT, and our firefighters to see what we can make work so you can get back in there. So that's something we're addressing. I don't know if I'll have it fixed tonight, but that's something high on our list to get done.
That answer your question? And that's kind of broad ranging, right? So anybody from 71 up to 80, where the fire starts right around 84 right now, that's the same answer. I know Lieutenant Fussy or Sergeant Fussy was out actually right after you talked to him, going out to the field to go look for that exact quandary. Can trucks safely turn around at the place that we're eyeing? And it's going to come to safety, as you know. It's going to back up every single time we have a roadblock. Okay, and that pass system, that's also what we're looking at too. It's been used in the past. Yep, it's on the table. So again, day one for us, we took over command last night. This is day one. Holding a meeting as soon as possible. That's very much on our agenda, and I know everybody in the neighborhood is asking for the exact same thing. My employee evacuated from 88, and she didn't go back to work in Talkeetna, where she also works for that exact reason. So it affects us too, our family. So thank you for that.
So let me just...
Yep, and Tom's got something too.
Yeah, I'm just going to say one thing about mandatory evacuations, which are not the case. But what happens to us oftentimes is people wait until it's too late to evacuate. And that's when it becomes dangerous, because we have emergency vehicles coming in. You're trying to get out. Smoke has obscured everybody's vision. And that's when, we run into accidents and we jam up our egress and we have problems then. That's where a lot of civilian fatalities take place. So it's oftentimes we've waited too long to get those evacuations initiated. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking, I'm staying behind, and then you change your mind at some point there.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, this woman in the back with the young child.
Is the McKinley fire actively burning at 84 or 82?
Okay, so the question is the McKinley fire actively burning at 84 or 82?
Yep, it's burning at 84 right now, and that's just about the lowest, the most southern part of it is at 84. And
Okay, and just to build on that answer, I know that a lot of locals are looking at that Kashwitna River line and wondering if the fire is going to breach that south. We're going to be messaging that as often as we can. So on the ops checklist for me is, where is it on the southern portion? Has it started moving east to Hidden Hills and the other subdivisions? I get the text messages from all my friends who live out there, and we appreciate those type of reinforcing questions because it's the same thing. We're going to try to pinpoint more for everybody. And again, there's a bit of a unfolding situation with the Duff. Sometimes it's moving just also steady, and then you look back and it's moved a couple hundred yards or more. So we're constantly reassessing. Okay. Yes, young lady.
I have a question in regards to the Hidden Hills subdivision. I had an elderly ill friend back in there. We evacuated Saturday, came down here to Willow. Sunday, his neighbors actively at gunpoint chased looters out of his yard. Made them unload his crap from their trailer, not just their truck, but their trailer. What are we doing to protect these poor people? Back in that subdivision where several were staying behind, he tried to leave Sunday night, was trapped behind the fire, couldn't leave.
Okay, so the question in general terms, we'll go to the general part of it, is about looting. And again, we talked to the State Patrol today. They specifically, after our cooperators meeting, pulled me aside and said, hey, there's been rumors and or accounts of looting. We do have active patrol 24/7, not just on the parks, but on all those side streets. And those gentlemen told it to me in a way that they wanted us to know how sincere they were. They even gave me the hours of their exact shifts that they worked to say, look, we're up till 2, 3, then we have a shift change, and those folks, and on and on. So one of the reasons why this pinch point is also very long is to prevent folks from being able to pull off and just jump out and go where they go. And I'll pass it off to Norm here too, because in any evacuation situation, it's a big concern.
There's people bragging on Facebook that they just mowed over the cones at Hidden Hills. They were going back from hell or high water.
So on Sunday, we brought the troopers, had a huge response on Sunday. I think they had 12 troopers, from the time the fire crossed the highway to when they started doing evacuations. Fire Marshal's office had, 4 additional people to help with that. In the meantime, since then, we brought in the National Guard. They're helping staff the road checkpoints, and what that does is free up the troopers, which were not all available Sunday, so the troopers are doing patrols to those neighborhoods. So I have not heard about the looting. I'll make sure Trooper Fussy, who we're working with, he's our contact, is aware of that. But they took those troopers that were stuck doing road patrol and now put them in patrol mode. So that's where the Guard has helped us out, is getting those troopers back in the law enforcement aspect of it.
Hidden Hills, as you know, is a huge.
I do, yeah.
And they're literally this afternoon bragged that this morning they rode the pilot car line and drove in. They mowed the cones over this morning.
Yeah, that's the first I heard, but I'll pass it on to the troopers. I know it's an issue every time we do an evacuation. there's people who try to get around it, and it's you know, but the reason we do it is because there's trees going over the road, there's firefighters working in there. It's a dangerous place to be. We're not going to be able to prevent every single person, but we're doing what we can. So the tools we have is the National Guard to staff the road, and the troopers doing patrols in the subdivisions, and that's what we have in place right now.
Thank you.
Thanks, that's a good question. Okay, let's go right towards the front here.
I have actually two questions.
Two questions, we might even get the mic close.
The first one is, are we at all worried about Hatcher's Pass? Because anytime anybody who goes up there just sees it's all dead, standing trees. So are we all?
Okay, so the question is just a general fire potential concern. Will there be new fire that impacts Hatcher's Pass because of the extensive beetle kill on the landscape? And I believe Norm has that answer.
So my previous job was I was the fire management officer here in Matsu, so I worked out at Palmer, and so does our regional forester. So he and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, and it's a problem. Chris mentioned our real hazardous fuel type is the black spruce, but with the beetle kill white spruce, that also just increases that as well. And it's a problem now, and in 15 years it's going to be a bigger problem as that grass starts going up. So it is a problem, we're aware of it. The one, Kale mentioned it very first thing, the one thing, we can't fix that problem as a whole now. I mean, it's just part of nature, and it's taken its course, but the public can. And there's a lot of information out there about how to firewise your house and your property. There's programs out there where you can get assistance to do that. Borough has folks that will go out there and look at it with you and let you know how to make it safe. Forestry will do that. So I don't think we can fix the overall scope of the problem, but individual homes and some fuels breaks, which we had one on Hidden Hills, which we're still utilizing, and we put in strategic places is something that at least the Division of Forestry and the Borough work together to provide.
And then my second question was about sockeye fire, the death on that. Are you guys at all worried about? I know it's ways, but still, it's just the kindling kind of area. It's all death. It's just
all the dead and down trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Oh, she's wondering about the fuel type change in the sockeye fire with all the dead and down left over from 2015 fire. And Chris, you might be able to answer that best as far as that change in fuel conditions and what that would mean if we had a fire or that fire were to progress in there. You want to handle that one?
Sure. For old fire scars, generally they don't carry fire, right? The black spruce is still the fire of the fuel of concern, and that's all been burned in that fire scar. So it comes back, yes, there is dead and down there, but there's also new brush growing up that's not as flammable as the black spruce. So unless it's an extreme wind event, most likely the fire will stop or burn it a little bit into sockeye and not carry through like it did the original time, right? It's been 4 years since sockeye. If it had been 24 years at this point, I'd say maybe it's not going to hold as well as it is, but 0 to 5 years, there's a really good chance that it's going to hold unless it's something on the more rare event side of things.
And thank you for asking that question. I get a lot of neighbors who ask about that, and they're packed up their dogs and they're ready to roll, and they're at mile 74 at a home that burned 4 years ago, and they chipped their 40 acres, and they're still worried. So that concern is real, and I always say, if you ever get that fuzzy, tingly feeling, and your spidey sense that it's time to go, the best thing to do is go. That's accountability 101.
In the sockeye fire, the fire came within 1,500 feet of my cabin. Do I need to worry about that right now, where I'm at?
Okay, no problem. So the question is, the sockeye fire came near her cabin but didn't burn it. I think Chris just referenced that if you were in the scar, the danger would be a lot lower, right? But let's go ahead and look at the map. Shirley Lake, let's look at the map after and kind of want you to pinpoint kind of where you are, and then some of the specialists can let you know what, for one, how far away you are from the fire right now, just so we're real about it. And then in the event of a new start around you, how to respond. Does that sound good? Okay, yes, sir?
Yes, thank you guys for all you're doing, and we're truly appreciating it. The Nancy Lake State Campground, I live on Nancy Lake, and it's been reported, fires, if people are staying in that campground, they're having fires. So I just want to be clear is there any kind of fire that's allowed in this area? That's crazy. And just to put two questions together, you know, a lot of people use burn barrels. A lot of people are burning their leaves. That was on Facebook, I heard. We really need to, should be no fires, even up on Hatcher Pass Road and stuff. You know, we really need to get that word out. You know, let's just stop. You guys have enough going on without any more happening.
I don't think there should be any burn barrels either.
You know, and opening up the transfer station for 5 days a week would be great.
I can answer that. So I just got a phone with the state parks, their operations director. So going into effect today, all state park campgrounds, campfires are going to be suspended. So that just went into effect today. That was their deputy director just made that decision. In conjunction with that, our director is currently working on a burn closure, which would include all campfires. So there's already a burn permit suspension, which covers the burn barrels. So those are illegal already.
People have a habit of putting things in burn barrels and they think they're safe, so they walk off.
Yeah,
and
that's
something that's explosive in a burn barrel, and when you walk off, if it explodes, it's going to start a fire somewhere.
So those have been suspended almost all summer for any burn barrel. So if they're being used, that's done illegally, and we have enforcement that can deal with that.
I mean, wasn't that what started the Sockeye fire in the first place years ago? Weren't they using a burn barrel?
That wasn't. Yeah. But so I guess to answer your question, so from Kenai, Anchorage, Matsu, there will be or is in effect a burn suspension of all permits. So that's the burn barrels, debris burns is what you're talking about.
And warming fire.
And state parks just closed the campfires for all campgrounds and state park lands. So that covers Hatcher Pass. So I think that answered the question. They're aware of that and dealing with it.
And maybe we could get this transfer station opened up, you know, so people aren't that's closed, you know, most of the week. And I would highly suggest that they could do that. That would help people do something with this stuff that aren't in the.
Yeah, that is a problem. If you can't use a burn barrel or
my suggestion.
Yeah, but I think mayor's here, so
we'll get it open.
And so that question, just for everybody in the online audience, was can the transfer station open 5 days a week to have folks be able to bring their debris? I'm going to start way in the back because we tend to bias the front where I can see you easily.
I just have a question. I'm in Hidden Hills and I'm the casual fire supervisor for the Capital Fire District. And we have a major concern, as you can see on this map, logistically, one road in, one road out, for the size of that community. Is there a plan on how to control the entry and the exit out of that community now? A lot of us are out of there and we're not going back in, but talking to the fire management team, what are you looking at? Is there a plan yet?
Okay, I'll repeat the question. The gentleman from Caswell works at the fire department out there, lives in the area, and is asking about the Hidden Hills and that area, big egress in and out, and what would be the plan to manage that. And I'll pass that.
So for the Hidden Hills, I guess to make sure I got this right, the plan right now is that's under the closure, and it'll remain so until it's safe. So Karen did a good job of explaining what's going on in there. One of the things we started talking about today, and Karen and I just worked with this in the shovel fire in Fairbanks, is when we look at re-entry, how are we going to do that? And we're looking at options. One of the things we've done in the past, I think, is what you were talking about, is like day pass type things, so people can go in, assess property, check on damage, that type of thing. That's not going to happen soon, but we have used that, and we'll look at that in the future when it's safe. So my intent is to get this fire in a place where it's safe to get people back home. I understand the need for that and the importance of that. I live here myself, and I would want to be back in my home, so I understand that. But we're going to do it safely for the folks who live in there and then the firefighters. But we're looking at all opportunities, and they're working as hard as they can to make that happen as quickly as we can.
Okay, Karen's got something.
So our first priority is to try and keep the fire from moving east to impact the Hidden Hills subdivision. So we're working on that. That's one of the first things we have to do. Then we need to go in, and where the fire has impacted the road, Caswell Road, where it's impacted that is to clear it out so that vehicles can pass through there. So first priority, keep the fire from moving. Second, make it safe for our folks to get in there and do some mop up and secure it, and then safe for publics to go back in. And then like Norm was saying, at some point, and I'm guessing it's going to be 4, 5, 6 days out before we're at that point. So not any time in this week, but we're looking probably into next week before we feel like we're in a good spot there.
Let's do about 2 or 3 more broad ranging, and then we'll do our breakouts. Let's go to the gentleman in the green shirt.
Got a couple of questions. First one is, Karen, you mentioned about the air tank. There's only one. Is it shared?
The question,
Just one.
okay, so the gentleman asked about, are we sharing just one air tanker?
Right now, I believe there's 2 air tankers in the state, the large air tankers, and then we also have some fire bosses that are in the state and are also a shared resource. So most of our tactical fixed wing, and that's what we call them, the either retardant dropping or water dropping fixed wing aircraft, are shared resources. We don't dedicate them really to any fire, and we utilize them based on a priority basis.
We have three heavy tankers now.
Okay, we have 3 heavy tankers. So we did get a couple back up from the state. So we had released most of our tankers down south, and when this started happening, we brought 2 of them back. So we do have 3 in the state now.
Do you have a part 2 on that, or?
Yeah. Okay, the other one was Richard, like I heard Richard Lake was on fire. Is that true or not? Richard, according to the map here, it's not.
That's the Deshka fire, and I can.
Red Shirt Lake, as far as I've heard, we have some smoke jumpers there, and they've flown in hoses and pumps, and they're doing things to protect structures, working with the few landowners that are still there. But no, the fire is not far south. The map that was handed out is fairly accurate.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Okay, purple sweatshirt.
What I was wondering is, one, are we ever going to be notified individually if our house is burned, or do we have to wait till we get back in?
Okay, so the question was, would somebody be notified individually if their house had burned, or would they discover that when they went back home?
Rich, can you speak to that? Rich Boothby is with the State Fire Marshal's office. They're doing the assessments. You can speak to how that process will work.
Right now, we just started this morning starting the assessments. We started on the north end. We're down to right about mile 88 and moving. All the data that we're getting is going to the Matsu Borough. We're probably 2 days away from having that compiled. At that point in time, I think it'll be up to the borough how you want to handle that or make notifications.
We can make notifications.
Okay, so the borough would do that.
Thanks. So the definitive answer is you will be notified.
Okay, now when it comes to re-entry, are you guys just going to broadcast this for everybody in the valley to see, or will you notify us residents first to prevent the looting that's going on?
Okay, so the question was, when it comes to re-entry, will it be a wide broadcast, or will it be individualized so that folks can get back home in the event they're concerned about looting?
So I guess I hadn't thought that one through, but what we have done in the past is when it's operationally safe to get people back in there, we do that through a public service announcement. That's something that Kale would write up. So it usually is advertised broadly. I could work with the borough if there's other opportunities to notify like specific homeowners first, and they may have a system to do that. We could look at doing that, but traditionally what we've done is give you a 24-hour time frame when we'll be ready. Operations can work out the time, and then we just notify people once. I'll work with Ken and see if there's other, I guess what you're saying makes sense. I just don't know the process the borough has to notify people individually, but I can talk to them about that and see if that's an option.
Yeah, because a lot of us are really worried that once re-entry is available, a lot of looters are going to come in before we get a chance to get home, and we're going
call into the calls.
Just make sure you call into the call center, give them your name and address, because that's how we're tracking it, and that's how we're going to use that list to make our notifications.
So that individual call center number is on our different posts we put out, and that's that one to individual accountability. Okay, great. I'm going to go for, let's see, I passed over you a couple times, sir.
So wood disposal.
Whoa, look at this.
Wood disposal, where can we get rid of dead and down trees right now?
Okay, wood disposal, dead and down trees right now. Somebody from the borough? Yes, sir.
Yes, we can post information. We have 3 sites that we encourage people to especially get rid of your beetle kill spruce. We can certainly open that up. We will put that on our website, matsugov.us, have that provided. Also, too, we imagine there'll be some discussions on cleanup for properties that are destroyed, how we're going to handle that to make it easy for you to clean up individual properties. So look on matsugov.us. And we'll have that, and we'll make sure we address that by tomorrow morning.
Okay, one more? Okay, we'll do 3. We'll do 2 more, and then we'll break up. Right in the back.
First, before I ask my question, can you give that number out loud? Lots of people out there don't have good internet service. AT&T has a tower down cell service that's really spotty. So if you could read that number, that might be helpful.
EVAC Accountability Call Center information line is 907-861-8326. 861-8326. Yes, sir. Oh, you have a part 2?
My question, that was just my comment, sorry. Temperature, it's starting to get colder. A lot of heat is wood. Being in socket fire, I'm paranoid. I'm not building a fire. I'm telling everyone to put extra blankets on. But are wood stove fires safe? I mean, we all know that particulates don't have. I'm asking you if we should be using wood stove fires if it gets.
Okay, great. You have an excellent projection too. I bet the camera almost got that. So the question is, residents in the area, is it safe to use wood fires as the temperatures continue to drop at night and our Toyota stoves are kicking out? Probably State Fire Marshal or somebody want to address?
No. Well, I think if you're using a newer stove, I've been date myself. I've been doing this for 30 years. Except for a structure fire that goes to the wall end, that starts from a chimney fire, I've never been to a wildland fire that started from a chimney spark. I don't know if you guys have either. So to me, that's not. I've never run across that. I think the bigger concern is, and this is probably where the fire marshal would speak, is clean your chimney flues and maintenance and that type of thing to avoid catching your house on fire and starting a wildland fire.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, if the fire were to happen to move, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, what should people that live around here, how would they know how they're going to be notified to evacuate?
Okay, so the question was, if the fire were to move, again, how would the folks in the impacted area be notified?
I can. I'll start, and Ken can close it out here. So for the our team, our operations would notify us if there's a need to evacuate, do further evacuations, or install different evacuation zones. We would work through the troopers and the borough to get that notification out. Do it's a Nextel. We have firefighters and troopers that are available to go door to door. What other process do you have, Ken?
That's what we do through the media, Nextel, and door to door.
So for those 3 methods, that's how you would be notified.
One is Nextel.
Nixel?
Nixel. It's can you explain that?
Yeah, Nixel's, you can go online, you can Google it, and then sign up in your area whenever there's a Nixel notification by the state troopers, or for example, the other night, everybody's phones blew up who had the notification sign up, and it had a Alaska State Troopers report about this exact incident here. That's a Nixel. We've already talked, let's get this gentleman over here.
Yeah, I was curious about how accurate the lines are, because the only way I can keep track of my property is via the internet, right? And I see right now I have 40 acres on the Keswick, and it's all in that side of the red lines, but I have a camera on my cabin, and it still shows nothing. I mean, I have a clear
Okay, so the gentleman's question is a very good one. How accurate are what we call these polygons, just so we're on the same page? So how accurate is the fire polygon? And if somebody is looking at home and zooming in on it and sees their property within that polygon, but might have a camera at home that doesn't see any outside damage of the property around them because it's an online camera that's reporting back, how accurate are these? And I'll pass. Yeah, we've got, I always want to give a shout out to our mappers. This is a hard job. It's one of the hardest jobs on fire. These folks don't sleep. They generally stay up until 3 or 4 in the morning processing data, printing maps, and having them ready for the morning shift, which starts at 0600 or earlier, and then they do that again in the evening for the night shift, and I'll pass it over to Karen.
So when you see these maps and they have the red with the hashtag, that means that's open fire line where we have not secured the edge. It's not an indication of how active the fire line is. So the way we're gathering information right now is from the ground, from what we can see from the road system. We also have aerial observation platforms, whether it's air attack in a fixed wing platform or mapping out of a helicopter. So if you're mapping out of a helicopter, you can't get into all the tight turns where the fire line actually is. So that's why you have kind of rounded edges. But the map does not indicate fire intensity or where it's active. It might be the case in some places where the fire's backed into a riparian area or a more wet area and it's not active right there. But just up or down from that, we could have a very active fire edge. So our maps don't indicate that, and that information is basically going to be projected through updates that Kale provides and myself as we move through this. And we may say fire is active on the southeast corner of the fire, or it's active on the north side of the fire, and we'll try and provide those updates where it is actually active.
Okay, great. We're going to go into breakout sessions now. We've been going at this for 75 minutes. It will be online on the Facebook DNR page. We'll post it to YouTube as well. KTU and KTVA had the bulk of it streamed. And then akfireinfo.com is always a place to look for fires here or DESCO or anywhere in the state. We have a command post at the Willow Community Center. And of course, our job is to answer all of your questions. So if you have individual ones, stay around. Our team will be here, and we want to thank you very much for the hospitality. I know the crews who've been out there right now have been just very grateful for all y'all. And again, our mission is to answer your questions, so stay around. Thank you. Okay, everybody. Hey, it's Gail here with you at the... I'm going to kneel down. You guys can follow me. Okay, great. We're a little tired. So I'm going to head down to the Menard Evacuation Center tonight and meet with the folks who are there. And then yesterday I was up at the Susitna Senior Center and met with the folks there. So we're not alone. We're just really focused on making sure that we're getting our first things first, which is right here at the command post of Willow, and then we'll be addressing you. So any questions for us, Aaron, online? Right, so the closed captioning for a piece that's this long, that's going into 75 minutes, YouTube will do it automatically once we get the video there. And if you have a hearing impairment or such, please let us know, put a message in there, and then I'll try to reach out to you so we can figure out how best to serve you going forward. We're doing on a very fluid schedule. I'll get down there when I can, but we have a lot to wrap up here and get this posted, and then when I can get down there, and if it's not today, it'll be tomorrow. But I am going to try to get down there tonight, and thank you so much. We appreciate you being part of the audience. Thanks.